you are on the crest of a wave, which is a great thing to be able to say about somebody in opposition at the moment. Deputy leader, close to the leader, and in the lovely and envious position of opposition. Are you enjoying yourself?
I like opposition. I think there's a bit of an oppositionist, or if that's a proper noun, in me. I sort of like to think of what's wrong with what somebody said and how could I make it better and all that kind of thing. So I enjoy that. But I don't think we want to be in it for a very long time. But there's no easy route back. We've got to work very hard and see can we earn our way back into government.
Well, of course, you've experience of opposition before.
We have.
Gemma Hussey, you gave Gemma Hussey a good old run for her money.
That's 10 years ago, you know, a whole decade ago, and it's like we're going back into a part of our lives which was that length ago. Yes, Gemma and I had our sprats across the floor, and now it's Richard Bruton and I and all sorts of other people have their opposite numbers. Now it comes across real cantankerous and bold on television and shouting and roaring, and yet we can walk out and discuss our matters together.
But you're a television person, of course. I mean,
I don't know.
You've been quoted as saying that you quite enjoy the fact that women definitely come off better on television, and your preparation tends to be much better than the men.
But do you think so?
I think so.
Yeah, well, people say how about so few women in the door, and what way do you think it comes across? I think visually television has made an impact when you look and you see the sober suits of grey or navy or whatever men get themselves up in. And
God love them.
Well, yes, and then women if they wear bright colours and or whatever, and you can see the spots of colour, but of course it's still very small numbers out of the total.
Well, as I scan my eyes across them, I see herself, and I said it's Liz O'Donnell, of course, gleaming up in the background as well.
Yes, indeed, gleaming, and all of the other women gleaming too.
Now, is there a slight sense of retribution, or a kind of ha maybe in your veins at the moment, considering the terrible experience you went through with Albert during that purge back in '92 when 8 ministers fell in a minute?
Yeah,
wasn't that
it was
the
St.
phrase?
Valentine's Day's massacre. It was the day before.
Was that the lowest moment of them all?
Yeah, well, I thought it was because I wasn't expecting it, and I suppose when you're not expecting something, you get a worse blow.
Describe
But he just called us all in one by one. There's no point in dwelling upon. He just said he didn't want our services anymore.
Are you allowed to ask why?
I asked why, and one other person asked why, and said, well, there was no reason. Clearly, he had his own choices of people, and he was very entitled to do it. But I smiled to myself afterwards. I was putting through a bill called unfair dismissals, in which an employer had to give a reason why he or she was letting somebody go. And I said, what a pity it wasn't in when I was there. I could have said, but why? Well, I did say, but why?
The story goes that as you left the room, you were casually offered the Women's Affairs brief, right? Which you refused.
That's right, yes.
Now, did you have to bite your lip at that moment?
No, because I didn't want Women's Affairs. I didn't want to be in a cupboard and turn the key and say, you're to talk about women's issues, and that is all.
Did you consider that old silly Billy time?
No, I just thought it was too limiting, and that people would conveniently shunt off things that they didn't want to do, and they would say, oh, that's for women, let you do that. And whereas I talk about women's matters and take them very much to heart and care deeply about them as part of my everyday life and as part of my public life too, but not to be confined to just that one topic, and I didn't want it.
Somebody like Niamh Branagh would consider that the Dáil should be compulsorily made
40%.
40%. Yeah.
But you can't organise that. The RTCs have got this silly bill put upon them which says you've got to have 40% of your governing body must be women. So they're out beating the bushes, and the women aren't coming forth, and they can't. It's false, because if you go in under that, you're somehow a quota woman. You're there because of your sex. You're not there because of your ability. And anyway, the last government, which was us, this government said 40%. They didn't do it in cabinet, though. No, they didn't indeed. They kept that to 2 women and 13 men. So why tell other lesser bodies they've got to do it when you don't do it yourself?
Now, you've been unfairly, I think, compared to Margaret Thatcher. That's a presidency and a sort of monarchical aspiration of a kind. But as we look to the park, Mary Robinson will not be there forever, though many would think that was an aspiration that was valid. Would you fancy a shot at that yourself?
No, I wouldn't. No, I'd hate the loneliness of it all. Up there, secreted away, and very formal situations.
Do you feel she's hamstrung by our constitution?
I think that she's very proper about her job, obviously, and gives it great attention, but you're very constrained where you go, what you can say, whom you can meet, how you do things. It's all within very strict parameters, and that wouldn't suit me whatsoever. I just would go be very frustrated with it.
No, indeed, the Taoiseach and several subcommittees would have to be called
Contain me.
in to contain
and bound
you.
me.
Yeah.
And bind me, yes. And I can't fancy Enda strutting around. No, I can't.
Would he not do that? He wouldn't walk 5 paces
No,
behind.
he just would not, no.
I believe, as a matter of fact, I loved the description of how you fell in love with him. It was an instantaneous love. Yeah.
Sort of, yeah, but it's a long time ago. Yes, we did. We were sort of buying girl next door many, many years ago.
And are you very much in love still?
Yeah, it lasted on, it did, and it can do so. I'm sure you're the same way.